Let's throw away those JSON files and let's talk data gen. New topics added to the Forge and Fabric courses, such as tameable and writable entities, projectiles, throwable projectiles, and boats, as well as first steps to biomes and dimensions. Courses linked in the description below. Alright, we found ourselves back in IntelliJ once more, and in this tutorial, we're going to be adding data gen to our mod over here, and it's going to be freaking glorious. So for those who don't know, data gen is basically an alternative way to generate the JSON files. This includes block state JSON files, block model and item model JSON files, as well as all of the data JSON files like the loot tables, the recipes, the tags, all of them. Everything is going to be generated in terms of the JSON files. The only thing I will not show here is the lang, because in my personal opinion, the language provider, right, so generating the JSON files for different languages, at some point, you pretty much still have to put in exactly the same as in this JSON file. And also, it might actually make it harder for you to translate it to different languages later down the line. So this is the one thing I will not show. However, if you really wanted, you can take a look at that yourself. But for the time being, let's just jump into the tutorial mod package, right-click new package, and we'll call this the data gen package. And inside of here, oh boy, we're going to need quite a few classes. So the first one is the data generators class. This one is going to house all of the data generators and is actually going to be the thing that's going to get called via an event. And then we're going to have the mod block state provider over here. We're going to have the mod block tag generator. We're going to have the new class of the mod item model provider. We're going to have the new class of the mod item tag generator. We'll also have the mod loot table provider, and last but certainly not least, we'll have the mod recipe provider here as well. And inside of the data gen package, we're also going to create another package. I'm going to call this the loot package, and inside of there, we'll make the mod block loot tables over here. There we go, and that's going to be all the classes that we're going to need. Let's start with the mod block state provider over here. This will extend the block state provider here from Net Forge client model generators, and we're going to hover over this, implement the register state and models method, hover over this again, create constructor matching super. We can then delete this mod ID right here because, well, our mod ID, we know this is tutorial mod.modid. So there we go. And now inside of the register states and models method, this is where, well, basically all of the custom models go. Now, in theory, you have some methods available from the block state provider over here. So if you middle mouse button click on this, you can actually see there's a few things like QO, simple block with item. So a few things here are available, and that's pretty cool. However, what I have personally found is that sometimes you need some custom methods. So for this, just to make this a little bit easier, I have a custom method over here that is the block with item method. As of always, of course, all of the code is available to you in the description below in the GitHub repository. And this block with item method simply makes it so that you can just pass in the registry object, and then it's going to make a custom block as well as the item for it. So that is going to be awesome, and that is going to be the thing that we're going to need for most of our blocks. So mod blocks dot, let's start with the sapphire block over here. We can duplicate this for the raw sapphire block, and we can basically continue along with the ores over here. So that's going to be the sapphire ore, duplicate this a couple of times, the deep state sapphire ore, the endstone sapphire ore, there we go, the nether sapphire ore, and then this is going to be the sound block. And let's actually double check over here. That's going to be those, this one, these two. That would be all of the blocks that we have. So far, this is all we need. In the future, of course, when we add different types of blocks that require different methods over here, we're going to go back into the mod block state provider class over here, and we're going to add that as well, of course. So all of the examples in the future are going to be done with a data gen, so do keep that in mind. But that is actually everything that we need in this class, so we can continue to the mod block tag generator. This one extends the block tags provider. Now, sometimes I'm calling them generators, sometimes I'm calling them providers. Really, honestly, it doesn't matter that much what you call them. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just the name of the class. As long as you know this class is responsible for the block tags, you should pretty much be good to go. Let's hover over this, implement the add tags method, and then let's hover over this again, create constructor matching super. And here we're going to once again delete the mod ID because once again, we know our mod ID is tutorial mod.modid, so we should be totally fine. And then in the add tags method, this is going to be very interesting because what you want to do here is you want to call this .tag and then pass in the tag key, as you can see. So let's start with our custom one. This would be mod tags.blocks.metal detector valuables. And here we want to add number one, the block, right? So this is going to be mod blocks.sapphire ore.get. And then after the last closing parentheses over here, we also want to add a tag, and that tag is tags.blocks.ores, which is the forge ores tag, which actually will basically generate the exact same tag over here that we have right here. So the sapphire ore right here is going to be this one, while the tags over here, right, the forge ores tag is exactly this one. So that's going to generate the exact same JSON file. However, we have some other tags that we're also want to, well, create. These are the mineable as well as the needs X tool tag, and we're going to add those as well. Let's just duplicate this guy, and this is going to be, the tag is block tags dot, this is going to be the need iron tool here in this case, and the need iron tool had just the sapphire block. All right, and this could be the sapphire block. There we go, and no tag over here needed. Then we have the needs a diamond tool. That one had the raw sapphire block, so we're going to add the raw sapphire block to it. We can duplicate this again, just select it, Control D, and then here we, for example, have the needs stone tool, and that one had the nether one, so let's just add this here as well. The nether ore block, there we go. But now all of them, or almost all of our blocks, had the pickaxe, so we want that as well. So let's just duplicate it one more time, and then this is going to be the mineable with pickaxe over here. There we go. And here we want to add multiple blocks. Now you can just add it in the following way. You can just add them all into the add method, just do a comma over here, and then say mod blocks dot, and then the other block, for example, the raw sapphire block dot get, and you can basically just chain them together. I'm just going to duplicate it a couple of times, and that should pretty much be all of them. So that's going to be the ore, the normal ore. I'm going to have the deep state ore, I'm going to have the nether ore, the end ore, and then last but not least, we can also add the sound block, and that should be all of the blocks that we need. So if you have another block that you're going to be able to add with the pickaxe, you can just add it right here. And with that, we pretty much have all of the different block tags done as well, so we can proceed to the item models. The item models will extend the item model provider over here. Let's zoom in a little bit. We're going to implement the register models method. We're going to hover over this create constructor matching super, once again deleting the mod ID over here, as we should already know this, tutorial mode.mod ID. And then here we can call the basic item method. However, once again, I found making a custom method makes it a little bit easier. Now it's actually not as complicated, and of course it's also available to you. Basically, you can see we're making a JSON file with an existing parent with this particular name. The resource location is going to be item/generated. That's just a normal item. And then under the layer 0, we're putting in MC course mod : item / and then whatever the name is as the texture. So pretty much this is the exact same thing that we're doing in the item model JSON files. And the awesome thing about this, we can just say simple item mod items dot sapphire, and then there you go. And that immediately works. And let's duplicate this a couple of times for the raw sapphire, for the metal detector, pine cone over here, and we also have the strawberry. That should be all of our different items done as well. And as previously mentioned, if anything else gets added over here, then we will also add this to this particular class as well. Mod item tag generator. Well, we'll add this already. However, we'll add this without anything in it. So we'll say item tag provider over here. Hover over this, implement the add tags method, and hover over this again, create constructor matching super. We want to choose the second constructor over here. Let's just change this a little bit. Let's change the mod ID again. This is tutorial mod ID. There we go. And then in the add tags, we have nothing to add because right now we have no items that require to be added to the item, to any item tags basically. However, this is going to change in the future, so it's best to have this done here already. Mod loot table provider. Now this one is a little more complicated, but luckily it's not too bad. What we're just going to do is we're just going to say public static loot table provider. We're going to make a create method over here, which is going to have a pack output. We're going to call this the output over here. We're then going to return a new loot table provider, passing in the output, then a set.of, which is just going to be kept empty, and then a list of, and the list here is going to be of a new loot table provider.sub provider entry, passing in mod block loot tables : new. And the second parameter of this is going to be the loot context param sets dot block, ending in with a semicolon. This is going to generate an error over here because the mod block loot tables haven't been properly added yet. So let's middle mouse button click on this and now create this class. This class extends the block loot table sub provider. We're going to hover over this, implement the generate method. Hover over this again, create constructor matching super. In this case, it doesn't matter which one we choose because we want this gone. First parameter in the super is going to be a empty set. And then the second parameter here is feature flags. this one right here, .registry.allFlags. There's another method that we want to override, and that is the getKnownBlocks method. And this is going to look crazy, and I'm going to explain what this does. So this is going to be modblocks.blocks. So this is the deferred register in our modblocks class. We're going to call getEntries. We're then going to make this a stream, and then we're going to map the following method, and that is the registry object : get. And then after the closing parenthesis, we're going to say : iterator, and that is the thing that we're going to return. Now, what does that do? Highest level overview, we're basically saying, hey, all of our known blocks that we are going to add via this particular modblock loot tables method, right? All of the blocks that are going to have loot tables are all of our blocks that are registered via this particular deferred register. So every single block that we've added right here that does not have the no loot table called on it, right? If you call this, then it's going to be ignored. But if this is not called on your block, then you have to have a custom loot table added in this method. I will show you the error in a little bit, what basically the error is going to be. But for the time being, let's just drop ourselves over here so you can see, drop self, and we're going to say modblocks.sapphireblock.get, and this is just going to drop itself. That's literally all that we're going to do here, and that is pretty much what most blocks are going to be. They're just going to drop themselves, similar to the sound block. Keep in mind that the OR blocks are different, and for this, you want to call this.add, pass in modblocks. Let's say the Sapphire OR over here, not or else, but the .get. There we go. And then the second parameter is actually a function of block2builder. You want to use the create OR drop method. There are also the copper OR drops, lapis and redstone OR drops. If you were to take a look at those, you can actually see what this does. Basically, it creates a Silk Touch dispatch table, and it's a little bit different from the normal OR table. So if you were to just take a look at the normal OR table, the normal OR drop is where it only adds one of them and then adds additional drops when you have fortune. If you want to change this, you can of course also copy this over. So let's say I wanted to copy this one over. Sometimes it just is the way that you want to copy over the methods and then change them inside of your custom class. So let's just say we're going to do something like this. Let's just make it so that we can properly read this. So you can see, instead of making this hard-coded as copper, what we can, for example, do is we can say item, and then this is going to be our item that is going to drop. There we go. And then instead of the raw copper, we just pass in the item right here. And then you can see it's going to drop between 2 and 5. And in theory, this is also something we could feasibly change, but for the time being, that's going to be fine. So this is going to be the create copper like OR drops, for example, and then I could call that, right, the create copper like OR drops modblocks.sapphireOR.get, and then the item is going to be moditems.rawSapphire.get. There you go. And now it's going to drop between 2 and 5 over here. We can also compare this with the already created loot table. So that's going to be the Sapphire OR, in this case 2 and 5. That is exactly the same thing that we have. I think the other ones were all the same, right? Between 2 and 5. So we can definitely reuse this one. And if you wanted to change this once again, you can just create another custom method. It's basically, it should be basic Java, nothing too crazy. Let's just duplicate this. And this is going to be the Deep State Sapphire OR, changing it here as well, Deep State Sapphire OR. And this is the Nether Sapphire OR and the Nether Sapphire OR. And this is the Endstone Sapphire OR and the Endstone Sapphire OR. So this should be all of the blocks that we need. So that's going to be okay. And let's make a deliberate arrow over here for the sound block, just so that you're going to see that when you add the blocks via the getKnownBlocks method, that basically what the arrow looks like if you have forgotten a block here. And then last but certainly not least, we have the mod recipe provider, and that's going to extend the recipe provider class. And it's also going to implement the iCondition builder over here. This one, there you go. We're going to hover over this, implement the build recipes method, and we're going to hover over this again, create constructor matching super. No changes needed right here. And then in the build recipes method is where we're going to build our recipes. Now the recipes are interesting because they usually require you to, sadly, for certain things, once again, copy over some stuff from the recipe provider, because for some strange reason, certain things are, once again, hard-coded. And the reason for that is that when you, for example, go in here and you go down to the ore cooking over here, right? So this ore smelting and the ore blasting would be really awesome if we could use this, because in this case, you can pass in multiple, well, items, right? So you can pass in the raw item as well as all of the different ore blocks, and it's going to do everything custom over here. Sadly, it doesn't work like that because the ore cooking has the added issue that under the recipe ID over here, it doesn't have a way to change the mod ID. So for cooking and smelting and stuff like that, what you want to do is you want to go into the recipe provider class, copy over those 3 methods over here. We're going to copy those over. The ore smelting and the ore blasting can pretty much stay the same, but the last one over here is where it's at, where basically under the save method right here, under the recipe ID, we want to make a plus over here, and that's going to be a tutorial mod.modid plus, and then a colon in here. That's actually quite important. And this way, all of our smelting and blasting methods that we're going to add are going to be under our mod ID and not under Minecraft. Let's first of all actually add one of those. So that's going to be the ore blasting. That is going to be the following. It's going to get the p writer, passing in a list of ingredients. Now, because we're going to do this for both the blasting as well as the smelting, it might make sense to make a list over here. So we're going to make a private static final list of item like. It's going to be the item like over here. And that's going to be the sapphire smeltables. And this is going to be a list.of mod items.raw sapphire.get. And then we basically have all of the blocks. So this is going to be the mod blocks dot, first of all, the ore.get. And then let's just duplicate this. That's going to make it a little bit easier. There we go. We're going to have the deep slate ore. We're going to have the nether ore. We're going to have the end ore. There we go. Let's break this up a little bit. There we go. And then we can just pass in the sapphire smeltables as a list of possible smeltables. The second parameter is then the sapphire smeltables. Then we have a category that's going to be the category of miscellaneous. We then have the item that you get out of this. This is mod items.thesapphire.get, of course. Then the experience drop. So this is going to be 0.25 experience. And for blasting, it should take 100 ticks. And then the group is going to be sapphire over here. There we go. We can duplicate this and also call ore smelting. And this way, by the way, just these 2 lines are going to generate the recipes for all of our different blasting and smelting. So these 2 that we've copied over, right? The sapphire from blasting raw sapphire and the sapphire from smelting raw sapphire are going to be created, but it's also going to create the same recipe for the normal ore, for the deep slate ore, for the nether ore, and the endstone ore, which is just way easier. Let's not forget to change the ore smelting here to 200. Otherwise, we're going to have a pretty fast smelting, which is not something that we necessarily want. Similarly, I highly recommend you take a look at the recipe provider class over here for some other different types of methods. There are quite a few that are very interesting. I'm also going to now show you the, well, let's say the generic one for both the shaped as well as the shapeless recipe. So you want to call the shaped recipe builder .shaped, passing in a category, let's say miscellaneous over here, and we're going to make the modblocks.sapphireblock.get over here in this case, and we're going to get one of those, and the shaped recipes are of course needing some patterns, so we're going to define the patterns over here. 3 of them is once again going to be a string, and let's just say this is all going to be S's because, well, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that the definition of the S symbol is mod items.sapphire.get, and then you need to do one thing, and that is called the unlocked by. This is a criterion, and the idea of the criterion is basically to say this is when this particular recipe is unlocked inside of the recipe book. You can call get has name, and that is going to be mod items.sapphire.get, and the second parameter in the unlocked by method is going to be the has. And then you just pass in mod items.sapphire.get. There you go. After the last closing parenthesis, we also want to call save. And then just pass in p writer over here. And that usually should do it. And that is an example of a shaped recipe. And for shapeless recipes, well, you just call the shapeless recipe builder.shapeless. Once again, passing in a category over here. And let's do the opposite. So that's going to be creating the sapphire and of course 9 of them. And that is going to requires. So the requires is basically the ingredient that you need. That is going to be modblocks.sapphireblock.get. We once again want an unlocked by, and that is going to be the get has name of modblocks.sapphireblock.get. Second parameter is going to be the has modblocks.sapphireblock.get. After the last closing parentheses, save the p writer over here, and that is going to make the sapphire block from sapphire as well as the sapphire from sapphire block. This is going to generate those 2 JSON files. Now, once again, in the recipe provider, there actually is one of those methods provided for us. That's a 9, I think it's called, 9-block storage recipe. However, once again, you actually have to pass in some strings over here to make that viable. So sometimes it might be more useful to just do it like this, or to just make another custom method for that. But in theory, that's going to also yield exactly what we need. And with that, all of our providers and crazy things are done. So we now can go to the data generators class over here and add the add_mod.event_bus subscriber over here. Let's import the mod class and then pass in a mod ID, which is of course tutorial mod.modid. And then we want to add a bus over here. Bus is equal to the mod bus. So this is exactly what you need to add on top of the class. This is extremely important. And then we want to say public static void. This is the gather data method, passing in the gather data event over here, calling this event, and adding an add subscribe event on top of the method here. Otherwise, this will not work. This is extremely important. You can, of course, compare this with the GitHub repository in the description below. So then we want a data generator right here. We're going to call this the generator equal to event.getGenerator. We then want a pack output. We're going to call this the pack output equal to the generator.getPackOutput. And then we want an existing file helper, calling this existing file helper equal to event.getExistingFileHelper. And last but not least, we want a completable future of holder lookup.provider. This is the lookup provider, and this is equal to event.getLookupProvider, and that should be fine. And then we want to call all of the different providers. So generator.addProvider, event.includeServer. This is going to be the new mod recipe provider, passing in the pack output. Awesome. We can duplicate this at least once over here, and we can then change this to, instead of making a new class, we want to say mod loot table provider.create, passing in the pack output once again. Then we can duplicate this once, and instead of including the server, we're going to include the client, because this time we actually want to create the model JSON files. This is going to be the new mod block state provider, passing in pack output as well as the existing file helper. We can then duplicate this and then call the mod item model provider. There we go. This is both done on the client, so that's why this is important. We can then copy the recipe provider once. We now want to be on the server again, but first and foremost, we want to do something crazy. So this is going to look a little bit weird, but don't worry, it's going to be fine. We want to say mod block tag generator. We're going to call this the block tag generator. It's going to be equal to generator.addProvider, passing in event.includeServer. And then as a second parameter, we want to make a new mod block tag generator, passing in pack output, the lookup provider, and the existing file helper, ending it with a semicolon. You should have no errors present right here. And then in the next line, we want to make the new mod item tag provider, or the generator right here, passing in pack output, passing in the lookup provider, and then the third parameter is going to be the block tag generator dot contents getter, and then the last parameter is the existing file helper again. And once again, no errors should be present over here. There you go. And that should be pretty much all the things that we're going to need. We have the states, we have both of the tags, we have the loot tables, the recipes, and the item models. So everything has been added over here. Once again, if anything here is confusing to you, take a look at the GitHub repository for comparison if there's anything that you might not have gotten. Oh, good thing I actually saw the netherite tool over here, because we actually have to add this as well. Please excuse this. This is going to be right here. And that's going to be tags.blocks.netherite needs netherite tool right here. And that's for which one? This is the end stone. Absolutely no worries. There we go. And then we should be good to go. Right, and now I want you to pay close attention, because this is extremely important. I'm going to delete all of my JSON files. Now for you, I highly recommend you make a backup of this, because if at any point in the data gen you've messed up or something doesn't work and all of your JSON files are gone, you're going to be kind of pissed, because to be fair, you're probably going to be pretty angry if this doesn't work anymore. So that is why you should probably back them up. In my case, I'm just going to delete the data folder. I'm going to delete the models folder. I'm going to delete the block states folder. You want to keep the lang folder as well as your textures, obviously, because those aren't generated by, well, any like data gen, right? So that's not what is going to be generated. By the way, if you don't do this, then you will get an error that you have duplicated JSON files, and then of course it's not going to work. So now to run the data gen, you want to go to the Gradle tab on the right and then just double click the run data. The first error we're going to get is the mod block loot tables over here, because this class is not public. If we make this public, this error should go away. Absolutely no worries. That is not actually the error I expected. The error I expected is going to be in the loot tables over here. That is fair, but that is going to be because of the sound block, because the sound block has not had a loot table added to it. And you're going to see, you're going to get the invocation target exception. And the actual error is going to be that it's going to miss a loot table, right? So you see missing loot table for this particular block. That means you have not added a loot table for the block specified right here. It's extremely important, as I've said, when you're using the iterator right here, that you add this particular block. If you don't want this block to have any loot table, you can go in here and under the block behavior properties, just call the no loot table, and then it's not going to be required mod block loot tables. However, otherwise, this is the cause of this error. So let's run the data again, and now no error should be present here in this case, or at least I'm not expecting one. Let's see. There we go, build successful, and basically you can see this when you have all providers took however many milliseconds. Usually this gives you the indication that we're going to be all right. This is basically going to be fine, and everything has been successfully generated. You can then take a look at the JSON files under source generated, and if you go in here, you can see assets, block states JSON files. We have the item and the block model JSON files. They're all there. Forge, we have the tag over here. We have the tags for Minecraft. We have the loot tables, the recipes, as well as the tags right here. The advancements are for unlocking the recipes. That just gets added automatically via the recipe JSON files. So there you go. And once again, if you keep the JSON files under the assets or the data, then you will also get an error that's called something like duplicate JSON file. That just means that you haven't deleted or moved your JSON files from your manual folder right here, outside of the project, or deleted them, because basically only one of the JSON files can exist. But that is all of the steps that we're going to need. I know it's quite a few, but once you've set this up once, now it is as easy as just adding a few lines in the data gen and then just running data gen again. So keep in mind that every time you add something to the data gen, you have to run the data gen task again. You can just click over here on the top right, switch to run client, and now we can run the client again and actually see that everything is still going to work totally fine. So let's take a look. All right, friends, it's back in Minecraft, and first of all, you can see everything here still has a texture. It still looks totally fine, so everything here is still working absolutely spectacularly. We can even see that the metal detector, it still finds certain things, right, even though we deleted the tag. Of course, the tag has been created via the data gen, and I mean, I don't even know what else we can see. We can maybe take a look at some crafting recipes over here. So let's just take a look for the time being. So let's just set down a crafting table. You can see, there we go. We get this, and we even unlock the recipe. You can see they are under the sapphire right here, and there's the sapphire block. So everything is still working exactly how you'd expect it to. Absolutely freaking fantastic. And that is custom data gen added to Minecraft. What a journey, but I'm telling you, it's going to be really, really useful, especially in this video right here, where we'll add stairs, fences, and all of those non-block blocks, which are going to require a lot of JSON files, which are going to be done with data gen. Hope to see you there. So, yeah.